Hello and welcome to part 3 of the WriteEvolution.com tutorial. So where we left off in part 2 is a second writer, writer 2, has logged in, reviewed stories that were open for writing, chosen a story, saw that chapter 2 was available for a new draft, and that writer basically created a new draft that will uh, when the time comes, be voted on and possibly promoted to the edit room for chapter 2 of the Mount Everest or the Mount Rainier story. So just to show some additional features of this site, one is a built-in notification slash private messaging system. Because obviously if multiple writers are going to be contributing to a story and writing different chapters, and there's a seed author and an editor involved, there'll need to be a lot of communication among all those people. So to facilitate that, we set up a private messaging system. And it's not too fancy, but it does actually allow not only private messages between users, but also notifications that happen and get sent to a user or a group of users whenever some significant event happens to a story or a chapter in which they're involved. So let's take a look at that based on the activity we saw in the first two parts of the tutorial. So I'm logged in this browser as writer2, and if you remember, that's the writer that created the second chapter to the story. I should say a draft of the second chapter, as there might be multiple drafts, one by different authors. So if he goes and looks at his notifications, he'll see not only he'll see at the top, which is the latest notification to come in, is that writer 1 has replied to a private message that writer 2 has sent them. And basically writer 1 was just talking about the story, and writer 2 was talking about the story, and writer 1 wrote back, "Thanks, dude." Just a simple message. Um, these bottom two are actually notifications. So they weren't sent by a person, but they happened when somebody took an action that was related to the story. So the first one that we see is that uh, chapter 2 of the Rough Day on Mount Rainier story has been created. And I'm receiving this as writer 2 because I created that. I created a draft for that chapter, and thus I'm a participant in the story or a contributor. And so I'll get messages that relate to it. And same thing applies to this next message or notification, which is actually one generated by an action I took. Basically, I've marked my draft as complete. Now, if we go back to the other browser, remember here I'm logged in as the contributing writer, writer 2. If I go back to Chrome and check my notifications there, I'm going to see a lot more. And some of these were from prior stories before we started this tutorial. But you can see the first one that has to do with the story we're talking about is me creating the seed chapter. And I could see that I could also see a notification when I move the seed chapter to the edit room. And here I can see a notification that was initiated by writer 2, the one in the other browser, that he has marked his version of chapter 2 as complete. So as a seed author, I'm involved in that story, so it makes sense that I would get a notification that relates to it. And here I can see the email that writer 2 sent me saying that whatever he had to say about this story, hey, I really liked it, and then some text below that. And that's basically the notification slash private messaging system we have built in. And I think that about wraps up part 3 of the tutorial. In the next part, we'll go over some even more detailed features that the site has to offer.